Their own siblings and cousins created elaborate fake charities, specifically to trick these generous stars into donating millions, using family guilt and emotional manipulation to fund luxurious lifestyles while no actual charity work was ever done. The silver screen's shame. The year was 1930. Mary Astor, the face of silent screen elegance, believed she was funding a legacy of comfort and care. She was instead funding the vengeance of her sister, Daisy. Astor was immensely sympathetic to the plight of orphaned children, remembering her own family struggle during her youth. This generosity was ruthlessly exploited by her older sister, Daisy, who harbored a long-standing resentment of Mary's early fame and fortune. Daisy approached the actress with the idea for the Starlight Rest Home, a foundation dedicated to providing a serene environment for infants left abandoned in the wake of the Great Depression. The prospectus Daisy presented was impeccably prepared, featuring photographs of a stately but derelict property in the hills of Pasadena. That, Daisy claimed, was secured with Mary's initial $300,000 donation. What Mary Astor did not know was that the entire foundation was a fabrication. Daisy had merely purchased a few months' lease on the property to stage the photographs, and the funds, which would ultimately total over $1 million by 1935, were instead channeled into a personal trust used to purchase a string of luxury apartments and fund Daisy's lavish social life. The true motivation was not need, but envy. Daisy felt Mary owed the family for her early sacrifices, and the foundation was simply an elaborate, high society mechanism to transfer wealth. Astor was so determined to maintain her public image as a devoted philanthropist that she insisted on privacy for the rest home, fearing paparazzi intrusion would frighten the children. This desire for discretion became Daisy's shield, allowing the fraud to continue for 5 years before a suspicious accountant finally notified authorities. When the scheme collapsed, Mary Astor was left to manage the devastating financial and emotional fallout, quietly selling off personal assets to settle legal fees and manage the quiet, personal sorrow that came with such profound familial betrayal. The crooner and the fictitious Veterans Fund. From screen sirens to saddle-sore heroes, the core deception remained the same, exploiting the star's public image. Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, embodied patriotic virtue, a virtue ruthlessly exploited by his own brother. Autry, known for his wholesome American integrity, particularly through his support for veterans after the Second World War. Autry's older brother, Dudley, a charming but perpetually reckless individual, created the Veterans Comfort League in 1947. This foundation was specifically designed to appeal to Gene's deep-seated patriotism and his public obligation to his fan base. Dudley claimed the league provided financial aid, transitional housing, and career counseling to returning servicemen. For 4 years, Gene Autry channeled significant portions of his film and radio earnings into the fund, believing he was supporting a cause he deeply respected. In reality, the Veterans Comfort League's primary expenditure was not relief, but a string of high-stakes gambling debts Dudley amassed in Las Vegas. Dudley even purchased a 40-foot yacht, ironically naming it the Gene, claiming the vessel was intended for therapeutic sailing trips for wounded veterans. The truth only emerged when the Federal Bureau of Investigation, alerted by a bank manager suspicious of the fund's cash withdrawals, launched an inquiry. The resultant investigation revealed that less than 5% of the money donated was ever used for actual veteran support. The revelation not only devastated Autry financially, forcing him to cover the legal costs of the foundation's closure, but it profoundly damaged the wholesome, trustworthy image he had spent 2 decades meticulously building. The public struggled to reconcile the honest hero of the screen with the embarrassing fraud run by his own flesh and blood. Autry's quiet, personal sorrow led him to retreat from the public eye for a period, focusing instead on his baseball team ownership, seeking control and structure in a professional life that his brother had so viciously undermined. The Blonde Bombshell and the Reconciliation Grant. This next story involves an elegant blonde actress who, post-scandal, was attempting to rebuild her reputation. An emotional vulnerability her estranged cousin swiftly turned into profit. Carole Lombard, known for her vivacious charm, suffered a devastating personal tragedy in the early 1940s that left her emotionally fragile. Seeking to mend rifts with her extended family, she was approached by her cousin, Mildred, a distant relative who had always coveted Lombard's Hollywood life. Mildred proposed the Family Reconciliation Grant, a foundation dedicated to healing broken family relationships in the post-war era. Lombard, desperate for connection and eager for a positive public relations angle, personally endorsed and funded the grant with $500,000 of her own money. Mildred claimed the grant would fund community centers and counseling services. The center, however, never existed. Mildred's goal was purely self-serving, using Lombard's reputation as a tragic and forgiving figure to bankroll a lavish New York social life, complete with a penthouse apartment and a wardrobe funded entirely by the grant. The extent of the deception was shocking. Mildred fabricated success stories, hired actors to pose as reconciled families for press photographs, and even used the grant money to pay off personal creditors. When the scheme unraveled in 1945, Lombard felt not just financial loss, but a renewed, profound sense of betrayal, recognizing that her genuine need for familial healing had been cynically exploited. She was forced to issue a discreet private statement acknowledging the fraud, and subsequently cut off all communication with the cousin. The incident reinforced Lombard's reluctance to trust outsiders, and tragically, she never fully overcame the emotional vulnerability that Mildred had so skillfully targeted. The pattern was set, family turning virtue into vice. Ahead, we will uncover how a comedian's private sorrow funded a fleet of rare automobiles, how a glamorous foreign import was lied to about saving her family for nearly 6 years, and the heartbreaking scheme where a child star's own abuse was sold for profit. The betrayal was relentless. The comedy legend and the fake medical wing. No one made the audience laugh harder, yet off-screen, one of Hollywood's most endearing comedians faced a personal tragedy that would become the blueprint for his siblings' financial crime. Stan Laurel, of the legendary comedy duo, endured significant private turmoil, including the ongoing medical needs of a close family member. This private burden was known only to his inner circle, including his younger brother, Harry. Harry saw an opportunity in Stan's personal struggle and his immense public generosity. Harry created the Stan Laurel Benevolent Fund, claiming it would raise the final necessary capital to construct a specialized pediatric research wing at a major Los Angeles hospital. The deception was meticulous. Harry used legitimate architectural blueprints and hospital letterhead, simply forging the necessary signatures. Stan, preoccupied with his work and trusting his brother implicitly, personally donated over $300,000, urging his wealthy industry friends to match his commitment. The funds were not used for construction. Harry used the money to start a private collection of extremely rare and expensive automobiles, storing them in a remote warehouse under shell corporations. The fraud was only uncovered when the hospital's board, seeing the blueprints, asked Stan why construction had not begun, only to discover the foundation itself was entirely unknown to them. The emotional weight of the discovery was crushing. Stan Laurel, a man whose career was built on bringing joy to the world, had his goodwill publicly ridiculed and his generosity exploited for personal greed. He quietly spent his later years trying to donate to the hospital directly and anonymously, trying to atone for a crime that was not his own, seeking solace in structure and privacy. The Starlet and the Sham Scholarship Fund. For our next star, the deception was deeply personal, preying on her lifelong shame over her own lack of formal education. This is the story of the innocent starlet and the fake foundation built in her name. Debbie Reynolds, the quintessential American girl next door, often spoke publicly about her regret that her demanding early career had prevented her from attending college. This made her a passionate advocate for education. Her estranged stepsister, Dorothy, used this vulnerability to launch the Debbie Reynolds Rising Star Scholarship Fund in 1960. Dorothy secured a high-profile launch party, leveraging Debbie's name and attendance to draw donors. The official mission was to fund college tuition for young women from the star's home state who wished to pursue careers outside of the entertainment world. For 5 years, the fund collected over $400,000, but only 3 small token scholarships were ever awarded. The vast majority of the money went directly to pay for Dorothy's 2 children to attend prestigious East Coast universities and financed her frequent, lavish trips to Europe, which she claimed were international outreach meetings. Debbie Reynolds was so proud of the fund that she actively vouched for it in interviews, unaware that she was perpetuating a fraud. The truth surfaced during a routine tax audit, and the public humiliation was immense. The scandal reinforced the star's lifelong struggle with trusting those around her. However, in the aftermath, Reynolds chose redemption. She quietly used hundreds of thousands of dollars of her own money to establish legitimate scholarships at several universities, ensuring that her name would truly support the cause she had always believed in, turning her personal sorrow into true philanthropy. The noir icon and the brothers' empty retreat. The shadows of film noir often contained morally compromised characters, but nothing prepared this icon for the moral vacuum he found in his own family. Robert Mitchum, famed for his brooding, tough guy persona, had endured significant public scrutiny regarding his own past struggles, making him deeply sympathetic to others facing personal challenges. His younger brother, John, a struggling actor who had long battled substance abuse, approached Robert in 1955 with the idea for the Coastal Wellness Retreat. The plan was compelling: a private, discreet sanctuary in the remote California hills where entertainment industry professionals could seek recovery without public exposure. Robert donated nearly $750,000 over 4 years. John's marketing materials were sophisticated, featuring images of beautiful, serene grounds. However, the retreat was merely a series of dilapidated cabins that John used to host private, month-long parties with his friends, pocketing the star's donations as his operating budget. John successfully leveraged Robert's public image as a non-judgmental figure to secure the star's initial buy-in. When a local sheriff, responding to noise complaints, investigated the retreat and found no professionals and no actual patients, the scam was revealed. The public reaction was brutal, painting Robert Mitchum as either hopelessly naive or complicit in the sham. The actor, known for his ability to withstand criticism, was profoundly wounded by his brother's cynical use of a cause so close to Robert's own past. Mitchum publicly apologized, quietly settled all outstanding debts owed by the fraudulent foundation, and completely cut off his brother, forever burdened by the knowledge that his own painful history had been sold for a profit. The foreign import and the family rescue, ruse. The Golden Age welcomed dazzling stars from Europe, each carrying a painful past. For one stunning actress, that past was weaponized against her by the man she trusted to save her family. Hedy Lamarr, the glamorous Austrian actress, had escaped a volatile early marriage in Europe, but the welfare of her relatives who remained overseas became a lifelong source of anxiety. In 1943, her distant uncle, Rudolph, approached her with the European Emigrant Relief Fund. Rudolph claimed to have high-level contacts who could expedite the emigration process for her family and others trapped by the conflict. Lamarr, desperate and burdened by guilt, funneled nearly $1 million into the fund over a 6-year period. Rudolph, meanwhile, used the money to establish a luxurious new life for himself in Argentina, complete with a sprawling estate, claiming the high costs were necessary for the clandestine operations of the fund. He would send Lamarr falsified letters and updates, promising her family's imminent arrival. The truth was exposed in 1949 when a genuine relief organization contacted Lamarr, informing her that her family had already safely immigrated years earlier through standard channels, and that Rudolph's fund did not exist. The cruelest discovery was not the financial loss, but the realization that years of her personal anxiety, all the stress, the worry, the guilt she carried for them, had been a deliberate, engineered fiction. This betrayal compounded her feelings of isolation and mistrust, reinforcing the idea that her beauty only attracted opportunists, a theme that would tragically define her later, reclusive life. The Western hero and the ranch scam. The screen's most dependable saddle-sore hero was known for his straight-shooting morality, but when his own fortune was on the line, he found his trust had been fundamentally misplaced. John Wayne, a symbol of American masculinity and self-reliance, was immensely proud of his image as a mentor to young people. His wife's cousin, a charismatic but financially irresponsible man named Walter, proposed the All-American Youth Ranch Program in 1952. The program was supposedly a working environment that would rehabilitate troubled young boys through honest labor and moral guidance. Wayne personally donated significant land and cash, totaling over $900,000, and lent his name to all fundraising efforts. Walter, however, never ran a youth program. He used the celebrity connection to sell off the valuable equipment and machinery the star had donated and rented out the ranch's high-end cabins as private, luxury hunting lodges to wealthy clients, pocketing the fees. The scandal broke when a local newspaper, doing a feel-good piece on the program, found only Walter and his friends using the land for recreation. The revelation forced Wayne to issue a statement expressing his deep sorrow and apology for the betrayal of trust by his relative. He publicly cut off Walter and personally bought the ranch back at a loss, converting it into a legitimate non-profit center run by a professional organization, seeking to restore the integrity that his family member had so ruthlessly destroyed. The Songbird and the Empty Theater. Her voice soared across the nation, carrying the promise of happiness and escape. Yet, one of the great musical comedy stars was brought down by the one person who should have cherished her talent. Ginger Rogers, the epitome of Hollywood glamour and grace, held a deep love for the history of American performance. She frequently spoke about the need to preserve the grand old vaudeville and Broadway theaters of her youth. Her brother-in-law, Thomas, who was constantly struggling with money, proposed the American Theater Preservation Fund in 1948. Thomas convinced Rogers to invest heavily, claiming the fund was on the verge of purchasing and renovating a historic, dilapidated theater in downtown Los Angeles. Rogers contributed nearly $600,000. Thomas's scheme was simple but cruel. He used the fund to purchase the property under a shell corporation, then immediately signed a demolition contract and liquidated the property for its valuable land. The theater was razed 3 days after Rogers attended a highly publicized fundraiser celebration on its steps. Rogers discovered the betrayal when she saw the demolition crews on the news. The emotional fallout was severe. Rogers, known for her strong, independent spirit, was publicly exposed as a victim of a transparent scam run by family. The sense of betrayal went beyond the money. It was the cynical destruction of a cultural landmark she cherished. The incident made Rogers permanently suspicious of all philanthropic endeavors, and she spent the rest of her life focused on private religious causes, convinced that only true faith could overcome human greed. The Leading Man and the Fake Archive. He epitomized the dignity and charm of the era. This leading man's downfall was rooted in his deepest desire: to leave a serious, lasting legacy beyond matinee idol status. Tyrone Power, famous for his romantic heroism, developed a serious interest in film preservation toward the end of his life. He saw it as a means of cementing his artistic credibility. His younger half-brother, Paul, used this desire to create the Classic Film History Archives in 1953. Paul persuaded Tyrone to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to acquire and restore nitrate film prints and historical documents. Paul's true intention was to acquire the archive's spacious, rent-free building for his own use. He systematically sold off the most valuable and rare film reels to private collectors and used the large, temperature-controlled vault as his personal, free storage unit for non-archival items. The fraud was uncovered following Tyrone Power's sudden passing in 1958. His estate discovered the vast discrepancies in the archive's inventory and found documentation proving Paul had been liquidating assets for 5 years. The revelation was a final, tragic footnote to Power's life, showing how his most sincere attempt at intellectual contribution was sabotaged by family. The scandal forced the estate to spend years recovering the few remaining artifacts, adding years of legal entanglement to the sorrow of his surviving family. The screen siren and the fake endowment. She could outsmart any man on screen, yet in real life, this glamorous siren was helpless against the manipulative financial scheme of her own sibling. Ava Gardner, the breathtaking screen siren, had always maintained a complicated relationship with her brother Sam, who struggled to maintain stable employment. Seeking to help him and establish a legitimate charitable venture, Gardner financed the Sam Gardner Artistic Endowment for Emerging Talent in 1950. Over 3 years, she poured nearly $700,000 into the fund. Sam's fraud was audacious. He used the endowment's funds to secretly purchase his own poor-quality amateur paintings and sculpture at vastly inflated prices. He would then claim the artwork was donated to the fund and use the inflated purchase price to justify lavish travel and personal spending. The deception was only uncovered when the Internal Revenue Service questioned the enormous amounts spent on art acquisitions from an unknown seller, who was revealed to be Sam himself, operating under a pseudonym. Gardner, who was rarely photographed outside of her perfectly maintained image, was forced to attend multiple legal depositions, her privacy completely compromised. She had to sell personal assets, including valuable antique furniture, to repay legitimate creditors and settle the tax issues. The final bitter act of the betrayal was the star's realization that her sibling had not only taken her money, but had also permanently compromised her trust in her own judgment. The child star and the mother's hypocrisy. This is perhaps the most heartbreaking story on our list. A shocking act of hypocrisy, where a star's own childhood trauma was repackaged and sold as philanthropy. Shirley Temple Black, the most famous child star in history, maintained a carefully composed public image following her retirement from film. She spoke quietly about the pressures of her childhood, dedicating herself to causes that helped young people. Her mother, Gertrude, who had always maintained a controlling interest in Shirley's career and personal life, used this public image to launch the Gertrude Temple Child Protection Fund in 1945. Gertrude leveraged her daughter's name and past fame to raise millions from fans and wealthy donors, claiming the fund provided shelter and counseling to troubled children. The irony was painful. Gertrude used the fund's capital to purchase a sprawling estate, which she claimed was the headquarters, but which she used as her private residence. She hired staff, but provided no actual services, exploiting her daughter's name and past difficulties for ultimate personal gain. The fraud was revealed when a state social worker, following up on a referral, found the headquarters was merely an exclusive, well-guarded private home. Shirley Temple Black had to publicly acknowledge her mother's scheme, enduring immense personal shame as the public realized her own mother was running a criminal enterprise based on the exploitation of children. It confirmed the star's lifelong struggle to escape her controlling mother, finally forcing a permanent separation that came at an immense emotional cost. The tough guy and the juvenile delinquency lie. He played the handsome villain, a man you love to hate. The real villain, however, turned out to be the relative he tried to save from a life of petty crime. Richard Widmark, known for his charismatic but often terrifying roles, maintained a private, quiet life, but he felt an obligation to help his cousin, George, who had a history of petty legal troubles. Widmark provided George with nearly $500,000 to start the Coastal Rehabilitation Camp for Juvenile Delinquents in 1958. The camp was supposedly a tough love environment designed to instill discipline through physical labor. George's actual plan was far less noble. He used the star's money to lease a secluded lodge, which he advertised to his friends as an exclusive, high-end vacation rental, complete with a paid staff catering to their every need. Widmark's money funded parties, travel, and luxury goods for George's inner circle. The deception was exposed when the local authorities investigated a massive disturbance on the property, only to find a raucous, adult-only party, not a juvenile camp. Widmark was personally served with a lawsuit filed by a few legitimate donors, and the resulting press coverage was brutal. The incident permanently darkened the actor's already reserved personality. He felt he had been played for a fool, and the shame of having his name attached to a fraudulent charity run by a family member was a burden he carried for the rest of his life. The Elegant Matriarch and the Bogus Beautification Society. She commanded the screen as the refined, sophisticated woman of society. Her downfall was fueled by a subtle snobbery, as she sought to improve the world, starting with her own neighborhood. Tallulah Bankhead, known for her theatrical flair and immense wealth, was convinced by her sister, Eugenia, to fund the Hollywood Hills Beautification Society in 1940. Eugenia claimed the goal was to purchase and plant new trees and flowers to restore the area's declining natural charm. Bankhead donated over $300,000, delighted by the idea of making her expensive neighborhood more exclusive. The money, however, was used almost entirely for Eugenia's personal benefit. Eugenia paid exorbitant consulting fees to herself, and the remaining funds went into purchasing exotic plants and elaborate statuary for her own expansive property. She used the funds' stationery and prestige to secure private appointments with landscapers, all paid for by her sister's generosity. The fraud was revealed when a local citizens group inquired about the lack of public planting, only to discover the society's address was Eugenia's mansion. The scandal was particularly embarrassing for Bankhead, who had a reputation for witty social commentary. She was publicly mocked for her gullibility by the press. In a rare moment of humility, she admitted she had been too easily swayed by the promise of social improvement, reinforcing her tendency toward dramatic excess and distrust of her sister's constant need for money. The Screen Queen and the Private Debt Fund. This is the most shocking final story of generational entitlement. For our next star, the betrayal came from the very person she built her entire later life around, her own daughter. Joan Fontaine, the elegant and Oscar-winning actress, had a notoriously fraught relationship with her sister, Olivia de Havilland, but she cherished her daughter, Deborah, seeking stability and legacy in her later years. Deborah convinced Fontaine to launch the Deborah Fontaine Private Literacy Initiative in 1972, claiming it would fund small, private tutors for disadvantaged children. Fontaine put nearly $1 million into the fund over 5 years, seeing it as a lasting, positive connection to her daughter. The fund provided zero literacy assistance. Every donation was immediately rerouted, operating not as a charity, but as a systematic, untraceable mechanism for Deborah to liquidate her bad investments, treating the star's goodwill as a personal automated teller machine. The operation was a bare-faced, complete fraud. The star was alerted not by an external audit, but by a suspicious financial manager who noticed the enormous cash transfers directly to Deborah's creditors. The subsequent private legal confrontation between mother and daughter was devastating, confirming Fontaine's worst fears about her family's manipulative nature. The event left the star isolated and financially damaged, ending her public philanthropic life and leaving her final years clouded by profound sorrow and disillusionment. The exploitation of these generous hearts reveals a dark corner of the golden age few dare to speak of. We want to keep unearthing these vital stories, stories of immense public stature meeting ultimate private betrayal. Tell us in the comments, Which golden age, star, scandal, or studio system secret would you like Golden Age Files to investigate next? Your requests shape our channel and ensure these truths continue to surface. The Girl Next Door and the Fake Animal Rescue. She was Hollywood's symbol of purity and gentle kindness, the very definition of the girl next door. The secret shame is how her own compassion was weaponized. Doris Day, known globally for her wholesome image and deep love for animals, was the perfect target for a scam that exploited her benevolent nature. Her sister-in-law, Martha, created the Doris Day No-Kill Sanctuary in 1963, leveraging the star's name and immense popularity with animal lovers. Day poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into the fund, believing she was saving countless creatures. Martha, a woman with extravagant tastes, treated the fund as her personal clothing allowance. Financial records later showed the funds were used to purchase high-end designer gowns, expensive furs, and bespoke jewelry, all recorded as administrative costs or fundraising attire. The sanctuary was never built. The only animals housed were Martha's personal pets, cared for on the star's dollar. The fraud was uncovered when a major animal rights organization noticed the lack of output despite the massive celebrity funding and launched an internal inquiry. The revelation broke in the press as the sanctuary scam. The actress was profoundly distressed. Her image of simple goodness was shaken, and the betrayal cut deep. To counteract the damage, Day personally took over the management of the fund, legally renaming and restructuring it into the genuine, respected organization it is today, proving that her compassion was real, even if her family's greed was boundless. The War Hero and the Stolen Gold Star Fund. He was the picture of integrity, a veteran whose public image was built on service and sacrifice. The exploitation of that image by his nephew was an act of moral treason. Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of the Second World War, turned actor, struggled throughout his life with the pressures of fame and service. His nephew, Michael, created the Gold Star Family Relief Fund in 1955, knowing Murphy's deep connection to military families. Michael claimed the fund provided emergency financial aid to the families of servicemen who were lost in conflict. Murphy, seeing it as an extension of his duty, lent his name and contributed a substantial amount of his personal income. Michael's plan was despicable. He used the fund's bank accounts to cover his own massive personal debts and buy luxury property in Mexico, using the star's integrity as an impenetrable shield. When the fraud was uncovered, it resulted in a humiliating lawsuit that named Audie Murphy himself, destroying the one thing he cherished most, his integrity. The incident publicly exposed Murphy's naivety and added intense stress to his already troubled later years. The shame, compounded by his existing wartime pressures, became an unbearable psychological weight. For a man who risked his life for his country, the betrayal by his own blood and the subsequent public humiliation was the one battle Audie Murphy could not win. The character actor and the fictitious library. Often playing the kindly professor or the loyal sidekick, this actor possessed a quiet intelligence that was ultimately leveraged against him by his own family's academic ambitions. Claude Rains, the distinguished character actor, maintained a reserved, scholarly demeanor, often expressing his passion for historical texts and literature. His elderly, highly respected aunt, Eleanor, used this interest to create the American Manuscript Acquisition Fund in 1952. The aunt, a woman of great social standing, convinced Rains that the fund was acquiring rare, invaluable historical documents for a future public library. Rains contributed a sizable sum, viewing it as his intellectual legacy. The reality was that Eleanor was using the money to purchase specific first edition books for her own vast private library, ensuring the books were sold to the fund at an inflated price by a friendly dealer. Once cataloged in her private collection, she would claim they were in transit or under conservation. The deception was uncovered when a legitimate book collector, hearing rumors of the fund's acquisitions, tried to arrange a viewing and was told the collection was closed indefinitely. The actor, a man of immense personal dignity, felt a profound sense of humiliation that his intellectual interest had been so cynically exploited. He settled the matter quietly, selling off a personal property to cover the losses, but the incident ended his relationship with his beloved aunt and contributed to his increasing reclusiveness. The dramatic star and the phony foundation. Her dramatic range was legendary, but the greatest performance of her life was trying to navigate the complex, resentful relationship with the brother who felt entitled to her success. Bette Davis, known for her powerful, often volatile, emotional life, both on and off screen, maintained a notoriously difficult relationship with her older brother, Bobby Davis. Bobby was deeply jealous of his sister's colossal fame, feeling that he, as the older sibling, was owed a share of the spotlight and the fortune she had amassed through sheer talent and unwavering drive. This corrosive resentment formed the toxic foundation for the fraud she would endure. Hoping desperately to mend the rift and provide Bobby with a dignified, respectable occupation away from her own industry, Davis financed the Bobby Davis Creative Arts Foundation in 1947. She generously earmarked over $500,000, a staggering sum at the time, specifically for his management and the foundation's operating capital. The foundation's stated mission was genuinely noble: to provide grants, studio space, and material support for struggling New England artists, creating a haven for creativity outside the commercial confines of Hollywood. For Davis, this was an attempt to purchase peace and validation for her brother, proving her success could benefit him directly. Bobby, however, had no interest in art or philanthropy. His only motivation was access to his sister's wealth. He immediately began using the $500,000 fund, not as a charitable endowment, but as seed money for a series of completely failed, non-art-related business ventures, including a disastrous attempt to launch a regional bottled water company and a chain of specialized sporting goods stores. He treated the grant money not as capital held in trust, but as his own personal investment fund, designed only to benefit himself. For 3 years, the operation continued, masked by Bobby's occasional letters detailing spurious organizational expenses. When Davis finally insisted on a comprehensive review of the foundation's books in 1950, the devastating truth was revealed. Not a single grant had been awarded, no studio space was ever secured, and none of the initial capital remained. It had simply vanished into the black hole of Bobby's failed schemes and personal expenditures. The revelation was the final, public breaking point in their already fractured relationship. Davis, who was already dealing with the unrelenting stresses of studio politics, demanding film roles, and her own turbulent love life, now faced the crushing knowledge that her profound attempt at familial peace had been met with cynical theft. She was forced to confront her brother in court, to dissolve the fraudulently managed fund, and attempt to recoup the remaining few assets, leading to a massive, embarrassing public airing of their familial resentments and financial details. The court case confirmed for the world that Bette Davis, despite her iron will on screen, was painfully vulnerable to the envy and greed of her own kin. The event caused immense personal stress, compounding her existing anxieties, and permanently confirmed her belief that her fame made her a permanent target for exploitation, fostering a lifelong bitterness toward those who sought to benefit from her name. The vaudeville star and the son's failed network. The voice of one of the 1930s most beloved radio personalities was heard across the country, but the whispers of her son's betrayal remained a secret shame. Fanny Brice, the legendary stage and radio comedian, was fiercely devoted to her adult son, William, a devotion that transcended the often fractious relationships she experienced in her own career. William was attempting to break into the burgeoning field of educational media in the early 1950s, an endeavor Fanny wholeheartedly endorsed, seeing it as a noble, dignified pursuit for her son. Brice financed the William Bryce Educational Broadcast Network in 1951, pouring nearly $1 million into the project, a colossal sum representing a significant portion of her accumulated wealth. Bryce believed she was funding the future of clean, moral media, a stark contrast to the sometimes raucous, unpredictable nature of her own vaudeville beginnings. This was to be William's legacy, bought and paid for by her unconditional maternal support. William, however, had no talent for business, lacking the relentless drive and financial acumen that had defined his mother's career. He used the funds to secure and renovate an elaborate multi-story building in Manhattan, which he grandly dubbed the broadcasting headquarters. He purchased state-of-the-art, custom-built equipment, hired dozens of expensive technical consultants, and paid himself an enormous executive salary to project an air of legitimacy and success. But the core mission, the educational content, the programming, the network contracts, was utterly neglected. The network never aired a single program. The broadcasting headquarters remained an empty shell, a symbol of William's entitlement and incompetence. The entire venture was a spectacular failure of incompetence and entitlement. Bryce, busy with her own continuing work and trusting her son implicitly, initially overlooked the lack of tangible results. She only began to suspect the severity of the situation after 2 years, when a worried associate questioned the sheer volume of invoices for furniture and travel, but 0 invoices for content production. Bryce realized the heartbreaking truth. The network was merely a massive vanity project for her son, a stage for him to play businessman with her earnings. The star, famous for her financial savvy, was utterly devastated by the loss, realizing that the money was gone, and, more painfully, that her son was completely irresponsible with her money, using her devotion as an unending source of capital. The incident forced Bryce to sell a major stake in her successful radio production company, the very engine of her fame and fortune, to cover the network's massive debts and settle with angry contractors. This blow compounded her sense of loss and isolation in her later years, as she mourned not just the financial ruin, but the failure of her dream to establish her son's respectable place in the world. The pain of her son's colossal, willful failure shadowed her final professional acts. The studio contract star and the father's debt. In the age of ironclad studio contracts, this actress already had her life controlled by executives. Her financial destiny, however, was stolen by the man who felt he was owed a piece of her fame. Lana Turner, the quintessential screen idol, was managed by her father in her earliest years, an arrangement that left him feeling exploited and marginalized when the powerful studio system stepped in to control her immense earnings. Her father, who carried a deep resentment that he hadn't fully capitalized on his daughter's sudden superstardom, felt the studio system had cheated him out of his rightful share of her earnings. His belief was that Lana's success was his property, and he was owed a perpetual commission. He devised a scheme to reclaim what he felt was his, the Lana Turner Benevolent Fund for Actors in 1945. He cleverly positioned the fund as a quiet, discreet safety net, claiming it provided small, non-interest loans to struggling performers and behind-the-scenes crew members, the very people the studio system was often accused of neglecting. Turner, who was genuinely generous and wanted to help her colleagues, poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into the fund. Her father's true motive was pure vengeance and greed. He was deep in debt from bad investments that predated her fame, and he used the fund as a personal loan mechanism without any intention of repayment. He systematically funneled the money directly to his creditors, ensuring his personal debts were cleared, and used the remaining capital to purchase a small private boat, claiming it was for fundraising functions. The actress, who was already struggling with the pressures of her fame and tumultuous private life, including studio interference in her relationships and a demanding filming schedule, was completely unaware of the extent of the financial bleeding. She discovered the full scope of the fraud in 1949 when the Internal Revenue Service flagged the fund's suspicious loan activity and lack of legitimate charitable disbursements. The public scandal was compounded by the fact that the person operating the fraud was her own father, making her a victim of her own family's profound, calculated need. The press had a field day with the sensational headline of the star's own parents stealing from charity. Turner was forced to publicly sue her father to dissolve the fund and recover what little capital remained, a brutal act that ended their already strained relationship and reinforced her image as a star perpetually surrounded by chaos. This highly public legal battle cemented her reputation as a woman whose life, finances, and emotions were constantly being exploited by those closest to her, leaving her isolated and wary of genuine affection. The director and the in-laws' exploitation. He was a visionary who crafted entire worlds on film, yet he could not see the simplest, most transparent lie told by his closest in-law. Alfred Hitchcock, known for his meticulous control over every frame of his films and his mastery of suspense, was famously trusting only of his small, tightly knit family circle, centered on his wife, Alma. It was Alma's sister, a refined and persuasive woman named Margaret, who approached him in 1957 with the idea for the cinema restoration grant. Margaret played perfectly on Hitchcock's professional pride and his desire to control his artistic legacy. She claimed the fund would locate, preserve, and digitally restore historically significant but decaying film prints from the 1920s and 30s, an era the director deeply respected. Hitchcock, delighted to contribute to cinematic history and trusting his sister-in-law completely, invested over $500,000. Margaret's deception was subtle, insidious, and perfectly masked by high society propriety. She used the funds not for film restoration, but to purchase and meticulously restore her own private collection of valuable antique Venetian glass and antique furniture. She justified the spending, claiming the exorbitant costs were necessary for environmental controls and archival storage within a proposed museum facility that never materialized. She even hired high-end designers and restorers under the guise of curators to make her private home into a showcase. The director, preoccupied with his latest productions, only learned the truth when a diligent financial assistant questioned an invoice for a specific, elaborate piece of antique Venetian glass furniture billed directly to the restoration grant. The audit revealed a trail of deceit leading straight to Margaret's private collection. Hitchcock, a man who rarely displayed public emotion, was reportedly left speechless and profoundly distressed by the scale and audacity of the frauds carried out by his wife's own sister. The betrayal felt personal, violating the sanctity of his trusted family circle. The incident contributed heavily to his increasing reclusiveness and his famous unwillingness to trust new associates, demonstrating that even a master manipulator on screen could be utterly helpless against the deceit executed within the most intimate confines of his own family. The funds were largely unrecoverable, leaving the director to bear the financial loss and the profound emotional wound alone. The final betrayal. Our final story brings us to the height of the Golden Age, focusing on an actress whose entire family participated in the deception, leaving her utterly alone in her final years. Loretta Young, the elegant star known for her dedication to her faith and her immaculate public image, was tragically betrayed by her entire immediate family structure. In the 1960s, as her active career wound down, her brother, sister, and cousin all convinced her to establish 3 separate but interconnected community benevolent funds. The total investment exceeded $2 million, intended for local civic and religious projects. The family, however, used the funds as a collective, untaxed private bank account. The funds paid for family vacations, luxury homes for all 3 relatives, and even covered basic living expenses. Young had signed off on the funds without reading the financial disclosures, trusting her family implicitly. The fraud was so seamless and complete that it went on for 10 years before a whistleblower exposed the 3 separate shell companies. The public scandal was devastating, ruining Young's reputation as a pillar of moral charity. The most painful aspect was the revelation that her entire immediate family had conspired against her, systematically draining her fortune. The event caused immense personal stress and isolation, forcing the star to spend her final decades pursuing legal action against her siblings. These 23 stories remind us that the greatest drama of the Golden Age often happened off camera, proving that even our most beloved icons were beautifully, tragically human. And so, the curtains close on another chapter of Hollywood's hidden history. If these stories of glamour, generosity, and ultimate familial betrayal resonated with you, and you wish to join our exploration behind the velvet rope of the Golden Age, please hit that subscribe button now. Give this video a like to show your support, and leave a comment below sharing which star's untold story surprised you the most. Your engagement helps us keep the golden spotlights shining on these complex, unforgettable legends. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Golden Age Files.